I will come here. I'll open a text editor. As you can see, I've already put the project in the text editor, and let's go and see what we're going to do right now. So I'll go to the to the project, which is at of course, let me open from this browser, which is at what? Localhost stroke what? New check. So to start loading, and we're gonna see where we're gonna start from. So that is the project. That's where we stopped at previously. So if I zoom out, I should be able to see this button, or I can be able to collapse and expand from here. So yesterday we stopped at a place where I can click here to become a member, and takes us to the registration page. So right now we're going to work on this registration page, but it is loading slowly. I don't know the reason. Maybe there are so many files that are being loaded from internet. Let us find which files are those ones. You can just simply press Ctrl Shift I, and then we can go to, you can see there's some files that are making our website slower. Bootstrap mean the CSS, it is requesting. Okay, we'll see it after the project. So we are working on this. We are going to see we also have to remove this thing. We are going to remove this subsection. I mean this sidebar thing. We shall remove it. So we're going to work on registration section, whereby someone will have to submit their name and their email and the password, so that they can be able to do what? To create their account. So that's where we're going to work from. So without wasting much time, I'm just going straight to this registration page without wasting much time. This thing that is rotating here, we can remove it, of course. Let us remove it. Let us begin with that. So I'll go to the register file, which is here. I'll just search this text. You can see it is here. So I can simply know that this sidebar thing that is disturbing here, that came with a template, I can just simply remove it from here. I just collapse, and then I click here and to remove those useless colors, and if I refresh, everything should be okay. Everything should be okay. So we begin with working with this form, the username, the name, the email, and the what, and the password. So let's go ahead and create those ones. So I'm going to go to the form. This is the form. This is the form. So I'm going to change this form to the method of post. Okay. Post. And I'm going to change this action to submit to itself. Okay. It's going to submit to itself. So the logic of this form, I'll be doing it on top of this very form. So it's going to submit to, I'm going to put here like PHP, and I'm going to put the name. I'm just going to put action, and I'm going to submit to the form itself, which is register.php. So after doing that, then let us give these fields the name, so that we should be able to collect them. So the first field, it is the name field, so I'll give it a name. Okay, your name, your full name. Of course, the type is text here. They had put email. I'll put here the name as, the name as what? As name. So the user will be entering their name from there. Okay, so I'll remove this ID. I don't need it. Then the next thing is the what? Is the email. So I'll come here and add the name. The name here, name as email. Okay, so after doing that, let me zoom clearly so that you can see. After doing the email name, I'll come here and put the password name. Of course the type is password, and the name here, name is password. Okay, so after that, having that set, so we're going to check if there is a submission of a what? Of post of maybe any of these one. Okay, we can check the submission of post of what? Of email, for example. So I'll come here on very top of my file and just check PHP and say if what? if is what is set, if is set, and I just put here the $ and post, and then put email. Okay, so once I know the submission of post is set of email, I'll know that there is a what, there is a submission of someone trying to create the account. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put here the pre-tag and just first dump the what, the data before I start working with it. Okay, I saw most of you try to work with the data before you look at it. That is very dangerous, and it will be very risky for you because you cannot debug something that you don't see. Okay, so here I'm checking if there is any submission of data, and then I'll pause, and then I dump this data and I die at this point. So let us refresh and see. Everything should be okay, and let us create our first account. So I'll begin by creating my own account. Okay, Muhino Barak. No, yeah, okay, my own account, Muhino Barak, and then I'm going to change this what email. I'm going to put mob0x@gmail.com, and then I'll put password 1234, simple password, and then I say accept the terms and condition. I click on sign up. So when I click on sign up, everything is perfect. You see the data has been submitted, and it has dumped the data exactly like the way we expected. So you're going to begin working with this data to register this user. First of all, before we register this user, let us look at the data that we need to create the user. So I can simply go to our database localhost /PHP my admin. See if people are watching. Okay, then I'll go to our database. Still loading. It's a bit slow, but no problem. It is so much zoomed. I'll click and reset, and then I will come here to our database, new chick. Okay, so there it is. So I'll see the user section here, the user table, which is this one, and I'll look at the columns, and these are the things that we need to create a user account. I can as well click here on on browse, and then I copy those accounts. Okay, but without wasting much time, I can just simply use these very ones by just selecting them here, and I'll compare one by one. Okay, so this is where I'm going to collect the user data. Okay, so I'll simply come here and put this data here. Okay, so these are the columns that we want. Then I'll come also to this section, and I copy the data that I've dumped, that I've received from the user. These are the very basic data that we need from the user. So it is here. Okay, so I'm going to create to create the account of this user. So these are going to be the very basic things that we need to create an account of a user, and we are going to create a function, because we don't want to repeat ourselves, a function that is going to be handling the user registration. So if we do this logic from here, of course, it means that when maybe we'll create an Android project, again we'll have to write a different logic for creating the user. But it is better to do to create the logic separately, so that we should be able to reuse this source code, or even to reuse it in different projects. For example, when you create the Android project, you should be able to use the same source code. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to write the method that will be working on register the user. So I'll come to our functions. Remember, I created the file of functions yesterday, and where did we store it? We stored it in files, /functions. Okay, this is where we stored it. Okay, so in these functions, I'm going to put the logic of registration. So the logic of registration, of course, it will be simply it's going to be a function. So I'm going to write here a function. Okay, I'm going to call it register. My computer is a bit slow, I don't know why. Register user. Okay, I can say register user, something like that. Okay, so I don't know why the computer is slow. Okay, so We will expect some arguments. For example, we have to receive some argument that is the name and email and the password, because these are the very basic things that we need. So I'll put here the variable of arguments, okay, args. Okay, so this argument, we should expect some things. Of course, in PHP you can pass array in form of what? In form of argument. So I'm going to be returning something. I'm going to be calling it a response. That will be telling the one who called this function if it was successful or not. In this response, I'll be returning two things. It's going to be an array that I'll be returning. Okay, it's going to be, I'm going to call it resp. It represents response. In the first dimension, I'll put the code. So this code will either be 0 or 1. Okay, so if it is 0, then you know it failed. You are not successful. If it is 1, then you'll know it was successful. So I'll put here 0, and in the position of 0, I'll put what? I'll put the code, which is 0. I mean, in the position 0, I'll put the code. By default is 0. And then in the second position, I'll put the message, okay? That I'll be telling someone who called this function, okay? So by default, the message is nothing, okay? So this is going to be just like a function that anyone can use when he's creating the account. So like the way said, we are going to receive these, these things that we need to register through the what? Through the argument. So everyone who calls this function, he must provide us the following through the array. He must provide us the what? The name, the email and password. Otherwise, if you don't provide us these three things, then we will not be able to use this function. So the first thing that we're going to check, we are going to check if the argument is having what? So I'm going to check first if is set, right? Is set, the argument is having the name. Okay, I'm going to first check the name. So I'll do the opposite, so that I should be able to return in case it is not there. So I'm going to check if the name is not set. I'm going to return for you this response, okay? So I'll first create this response. I'll update it here. So in case you did not send us the name, I'll just simply say in the message, I'll just simply put you must provide a name. You guys, I hope you're seeing how good functions should be written, okay? This is the best way you can write a function. So here at this point, you can just return. It's not the best. You can also come up with your own way. This is just my own better way that I can write I can write a function, so that it should be dynamic. When I'll create any project, it will be able to be used, or in any part of the project, it can be able to be used. So here I'm checking if the name is not provided through the argument. I'll return back that you must provide a what? You must provide a name. I'll return back the code of 0 and the message. So that's the first step. The second step, I'll check for the second thing. Of course, this should be what? The email. So the second thing, I'll check for the email. So I'll check if the email is not set, you must provide the email. And lastly, I'll check for the password. There's a member joining. Someone was joining, or someone left? Musa left. Musa, are you there?
Yes, joined.
Yes. I just lost connection.
Okay, are you following Musa?
Yes, I'm following.
Good. So I'm going to check if the password is not provided. I'll just say you must provide the what? You must provide the password. So these are the things that I will need to create a basic user account. So if you don't have any of these three, then you will not be able to pass this level. So after you pass this level, now let us test this function, for example. So I'm going to call this function. Okay, I'm going to call this function from here. Now this is the file of registration. So I'm going to call the function of register user. So it will be here, and I'll call it by default. I can make this one to be an empty array, so that I should not be able to do what? To crash the application. Okay, so I'm going to call this function. I'm going to call it from here. I'm going to get here, for example, you will be expecting something to get from the function. I'll say register user, and by default, I don't give it anything, okay? I don't give it anything. Now let us see what is going to return to us. So I'm just going to comment here. Okay, I'm just going to dump what has returned, okay? Remember, I don't give this function anything. So let me dump what is going to return. So I'll come to the project and do what? And refresh. Refresh. So can you see? Call undefined function. So why? Because I've not included that external file of functions. So let us include it. Of course, we have to include it. So I'll come here and include it. Require once, and I'm going to call it files stroke functions.php. Okay, so we have included these functions here. So I'm going to check if this okay, I'm now calling this one without providing any argument, and you see what will happen. So I refresh. You can see the code is 0, and you must provide the what? You must provide the name. So it is working perfectly. Now I know these things have been provided in what? In the post. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pass the post as it is. I can first copy the things in the post. You know, we dumped the post here, and you saw what is in the post, right? Let me dump the post again, and you remember what is in the post. We need, it has only the thing that we do what? That we need. So I can just the post as it is. Or I can first copy them and I pass them later, but let me just post the post as it is. The function will judge. So you see, I'm passing the post as, of course, it is an array. So right now we should not get anything, of course. And you see, there's nothing being returned. Why? Because it has successfully passed this level of checking. So after passing these levels of checking, now let us start creating the what? The data that we're going to insert in the database. So I'm going to put this data in a what? In the array. So the array is already in the arguments. So I can first copy this argument and I put in another array by just simply saying data, maybe data is equal to the argument. So of course, everything that is in the argument is going to be copied into the what? Into this data variable. So let us look at one by one. These are just columns that I've copied from what? From our user table. Let us look one by one the things that we may need. For the address is nothing, of course, for now. So we can put here like no address, even in case we want to put the default address. So the address, I'll leave it. There is nothing in the address. The city, we have not touched that. The company, we have not touched that. The country, we had not touched that, but you can provide the default values if you want to. We have not touched that. The first name, so this first name we can make it to be okay. So you see, the other side we just asked for the name. Okay, we just asked for the name. So I can make I can split this name. Of course, sometimes the user can provide the name in a what? Let me show you what I'm trying to talk about. Sometimes the user can provide his name while there too. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to split this name, and then I'll tell the first section will be the first name and the second section will be what? The second name. And how will I know that? I'm just going to simply dump these arguments, and then I'll get the section of a name, and then I split it. Okay, so I'm going to do like this, printer, okay, and then I'm going to dump this argument. You see, this is my name, this is the name, but it's combined. Okay, so I'm going to do the logic that is going to split this name. It's going to get this first section and make it the second name, and this section is going to make it the what? The third name. So how do you do that? We're going to use the str explode. Explode. There's a function called explode. What it does, it can explode something into array. Okay, so it's going to, it's here. It's going to, we are going to, it's called it's just going, it's called explode. The function is called explode. What it does, it gets a parameter, like you can get an array and you split it into things. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to get an empty space. Okay, and then everywhere that it gets an empty space in this string, it should make it a certain segment. So for example, this is the name, of course. This is the name, and we can get it from this point, okay? The point is here. The point is here. For example, I'm going to just simply say the argument, which is here, and it's going to have the name. So this is our name. So this str explode, this string, this explode, what it does, it divides an array into a string into an array by just looking at any character that you want to be exploded or to be used as a separator into an array. So you see, here the user separated his name using using space. So I'm going to say that everywhere you get a space, you should split that one into into a separate string. So, and I can receive this one as maybe names is equal to this. So it's going to get the names and it's going to explode it, or it's going to explode it into strings. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going just to printer here, like you see. If I dump here, you see I have an array. There are now two names. So you should learn this technique, this explode. If for example, if you want to split something into different things, let us say I have here, I'm showing you an example. I have here a name, for example, Bwera, that's where I come from, Bwera, Kasese, Uganda. Okay? So if I do like this, what it's going to do, it's going to get everywhere where it finds a space, it's going to remove that space and make that into a separate string. So you see, I'm going to get something like this. Why is it slow? You see, three things. So I can even use it as certain character. For example, I want to split using commas. I can just put a comma. So if you didn't know this function, you should know it. That's why you're having this class. You see, it has split this array into from commas. So what I know that the user may provide just his name as one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to explode it. That I should have two names, okay? So if you see here, I now have two names. Let me undo here, okay? I explode the name, and I'm going to have here I'm going to have here two names. Let me dump here, for example, names. So I'm going to have two names. You see, I have two names, and it has exploded this one by by the names. So I'm going to check, I'm going to initialize now the name. So inside this data, I'm going to add one more thing, which is the first name and last name. So I'm going to put here, if, of course, there must be at least one item, which is in position 0. It's going to be, in this data, I'm going to put here the first name parameter. So I'm going to put here first name, and here I'm going to get it from the names, okay? This thing that we've exploded here. So it's going to be names in position in position 0. So it will be the first name in position 0. But I'm not sure that the user can provide two names all the time. So for the second name, I'll first check before I do before I initialize it. So I'm just say if is is set, because sometimes the user can provide like a single name. So how will you know? So I'm going to check if the position 2 is set, then that whatever in position 2 is what I'm going to call I'm going to call name, last name. Okay, so that is a logic that you should learn if you didn't know it. Okay, so the second one is going to be the name 2. So everything is going to be beautiful at that point. So if we come here and just refresh here, you see we're having the name, we have the email, we have password, we have first name and last name. Okay, first name and last name. That's beautiful. So we proceed with our data, but remember we have this name and we don't have it in our table. I'll explain how it is done. Okay, so after doing that, we're going to proceed with our data. I'm going to get the last name. Last name is already, last scene. Last scene, of course, I can set it to be now. So how do you do that? I'll just simply come and put here in the data. Of course, this is the data that we're going to put in our table. So the last scene is going to be It's going to be at the current time, which is going to be just like time right now. Okay. So after putting the last scene, I'm going to put the password Okay, the password, of course, we've got it, but it has to be hashed. Okay, it has to be hashed. So you're going to use password what? Password hash. You cannot just store people's password directly into your database. So here I'll pass the password itself. Of course, this password we received it through this variable arguments password. Okay, argument password, of course. So it will have to hash the password at that point. Okay, so after hashing the password, and once we hash it, of course, the original one here will be overwritten. Okay, once we hash the password, what else? Okay, what else? We have the phone number. We have not touched that one. The profile photo, we have not touched it. We have the registration date. That one, you can make it right now. It's going to be reg date, and we're going to put the current time. We're going to have the username. The username, we can make it to be the email, to be the current username for now. Okay, so we know this user provided the what? Provide the email in the arguments. Okay, so we can just simply do like this and get the email from where? From the args to be the current username. Okay, email like this. Okay, so after getting the email, what else do we need? User ID, it will be generated by the database. User type, the default user type is going to be what? It's going to be customer. Okay, so if you create a user, by default this user should be what? Should be a customer. Customer, like this. Okay, so I think all the fields, we are done with them. So all the fields are done with them. Now let me try to echo. Let me try to print this data and see if everything is okay for now. Print data. Okay, so I will just come and refresh here. So everything is beautiful. Okay, everything is beautiful. Now it is the time to write the SQL. Now here, when I was sleeping, I thought of an idea that how can we create a function? Is it, if it is possible for us to create a function whereby we just write the SQL one time. We just write the SQL one time and we can reuse this SQL. Okay, we write the SQL only one time. We write a function that can generate for us the SQL, and we can reuse this function every time that we need to do what? To create that a particular SQL. For example, here what is supposed to be done right now, we know how to write the SQL. Insert into a certain table, put this into this, this into this, this into this, this into this. You'll find that it is going to be so complex. And likewise, when you are writing another function, when you're writing another query, another item, for example, you are saving a comment, maybe you are saving a new book, we are saving anything, we'll find that again we have to write another SQL by ourselves that will need to enter those particular things now what in a database. So I thought that is it possible for us to write a function whereby we will be just saying insert. We just tell it the name and the name of a table and the what and the table that it should be inserted to. Okay, so if we provide these things, if we provide these things, that function should be able to insert those elements it should be able to create the SQL and insert those elements into the table that will specify. So I'm going to try to create this function with you. First of all, I hope you've understood the problem. Musa, have you understood the problem? The problem is I don't want to write the SQL by myself every time. I want to write the logic that will be creating for me the SQL. So that I'll be calling it and it creates for me the SQL other than manually writing it. Do you understand the problem?
Yeah.
So let us try to do that function. So this function will need the table name, and after the table name, it will need the data that it should insert in a what? In a certain table. So let us do this. Okay, let's do this. Okay, so I'm going to create that function here. I'm going to call it my insert. I can call it anything. Okay, so you're going to begin by function. Okay, I'm going to call it maybe my insert. Oh, db insert. Let me call it db insert other than writing my insert. Okay, database insert. Oh, my computer is so slow, I don't know why. Database insert, and then we are going to expect two things. Okay, the first thing that we must expect the table. Okay, and the next thing that we must expect the what? The data, and this is going to be what? An array. So this by default will be what? An empty array like this, that you should not, our application should not crash. And the first thing should be what? The table, and that will be empty like that. So I'm going to create also a logic like this one, like we're going to first check this. If the table is empty, we should return that the table is, you do not provide the table. If the data is empty, we should return that you did not provide for us the data to do what. So that's how we can write the safe function that will not crash when the application is being put into real world. So the first thing that we do, we are going to ask for the table. We don't want the app to crash. So I'll copy this code and come here. And of course, this is how I'm going to be returning the message, my functions, because I said it makes more sense. I'll be returning the code and the message. So the code will tell if things were okay, and the message will tell why, whether the reason why this thing was whether it's successful or not. Okay, so that's the first thing. So here I'll first check if is not set. Of course, I'll begin with the table. If the table length is 0 or is less than 1, I'll do what? I will return that you must provide the what? The table name. So I'll just simply say if strlen of a table is less than what? Is less than maybe 2, because there's no table that can have one name. Okay, I mean one letter as a name. So if the table is too short, I can say table name too short. Okay, table name is too short. But in coordinator, if you're using coordinator, you don't need to do this. Coordinator can take care of everything. You just say db insert and then it will insert for you. But for me, I'm using plain PHP. That's why I want to create this function. Okay, so that is the first reason. Okay, in case you have a wrong table name, then you just say, in case you don't have this table, we'll just say the table name is not there. The table name is too short, and then we'll return for you what happened. Okay, we can go ahead and check if this table exists on database or not. But for now, we'll leave that. So the second thing, I'll check if the data is empty. So I'll just simply duplicate this function and check if what? If empty this array, I'll just say data was not provided. Okay, so after having these two things, then it means that you're qualified to do what? To insert the data into what? Into the SQL. To create the SQL. Okay, so let us create the SQL. Of course, let us first see how we write the SQL. Of course, the SQL is supposed to be insert. Okay, so let us begin creating the SQL. So begin by creating the SQL. So the SQL is going to be insert into, and then we specify the table. Okay, the table here into table, and then you make sure that there is a space there so that you not touch each other. Insert into table, and then what else? We just open the what? The bracket like this. We put values, right? Values, and then the bracket like this. So we put the value and the what? The value and the what? The value and the what? And the the parameter and the value. The parameter and the what? And the value. So this means that we don't need to close this one here, but you're going to loop through the data that we want to insert into the table, and then we'll do what? We'll insert that data into, as we are concatenating it on the what? On this string. So we begin by looping through the data. Okay, let us loop through the data. So I'll check here by simply doing like this. I'm just going to say for each, so I'm going to loop through this data, and then I'm going to do what? So this is the data. I'm looping through this data, of course, that has been provided. Okay, so I'm going to be concatenating that data on this SQL. Okay, so you know, when according to my logic, you know, when you're attaching the data, you have to know whether you've reached at the last point or not. Otherwise, if you don't reach at the last point, you have to know where you should attach if you will attach the comma or not. So how will I know that I've reached the last point or not, or if the last point or not? So what I'm going to do, when I'm going to create here a simple boolean, okay, I'm going to create here a simple boolean. You can also use your own logic. You can write this SQL manually, but for me, I'm just going to create a logic that I can create this SQL. So I'm going to create here the boolean that will check if we have reached the first point or not. So I can say first point, okay, first point reached, because you know, the reason why I do this is because I don't want to put the comma at the very beginning, because the comma is supposed to be in the middle between the values, is equal to false. So by default, I'm going to make the first point to be false. Okay, so after making it false, so I'll come again and then I check, and now I'll be checking here when I'm concatenating here. So here are the values of that I want to insert into the database. So as we are looping, first of all, we need two things. We need to specify this item, the column that we are inserting, and also the value, the column and the value. So we need these two things, the key and the value. So I'm going to just attach this SQL. I'm going to say insert into this, and then I'm going to attach in this SQL. But I'll first check if the first point is reached. Okay, if the first point is reached, of course, if it is a boolean, I don't need to put the equal signs. Okay, so and I'll put here else. Okay, so if the first point is reached, the way I will attach this SQL is not going to be like another way, the normal way. So I'm going to simply say, if the first point is reached, I will say this SQL dot equal to, you know the meaning of this dot equal to, of course, is concatenating, is adding or attaching a value on this SQL. So I'll have to specify the key, which is going to be the column name, and the what, and the value. You know how we insert? We put the column name and the value, the column name and the what, and the value. So that's, let me show you the insert SQL. Insert SQL. Let me remind you here. Okay, this is how we insert. Okay, insert into, we first specify the properties, and then we specify the what, the values. Okay, so I'm going to begin by putting the keys, and then I will go ahead and put their what, their values. You see, you put the keys and then the values. So we begin by looking at the what, we begin by putting the keys. Okay, so I can simply put here an array of what, of keys, or a string of keys and a string of what, of values. Okay, I'm going to create this string of keys separately, and then later I also create this string of what, of values separately, so they should match. So the whole reason why I'm suffering like this is because I don't want to repeat myself in future. Okay, and we'll see how it will be helpful. So this SQL, it is just insert into of course here this SQL had done a mistake. Let me just put insert into the table. So we are going to first create these keys separately and also create these values separately. So we put these keys. So if it is the first one, so I'll rub here everything. It's going to be dot equal to. So of course, if it is the first one, it is not supposed to have a what? It's not supposed to have a comma. So if it will be the first one, it will be here. The first is not reached. Okay. Okay. Let me do like this. Okay. So if it is the first one, of course I'm going to put this key because this when we loop, the loop will provide for us the key and the value, the key and the value, the key and the value. And this key I will make it to be what? A table name, and then this value is going to be, a table column name, and this value is going to be the value in that particular column. So I'm going to simply put here enter. 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 Yes, please.
Do you have any tablet? Food poisoning tablet?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you're welcome. So I will put here the keys. So here is going to be our keys, and I'll just simply attach here the key itself like this. But I'll make sure that these keys don't attach each other. So I'll have to put to concatenate an empty space like this, and also at the last here like this, so that they should not touch each other. So the key, and also on the side of values, I'll attach the what? The value there, like that. Okay. So it is the key and the value. So that is in case the first point is reached. But in case the first point is reached, I'll have to put there what? A comma, because they're not supposed to attach each other. They're supposed to be separated by a comma. Okay? Comma. So in case the first point is not reached, so it will be in this section, of course. And here we'll not have to put the what? The comma in the very first point. You're going to see what I'm meaning. So in the very first point, let me show you the logic that I'm trying to do, members. In the very first point, do you see a comma here? No. But in the second point, for example, the second value, you see it is separated by what? By a comma. That's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to check here. In the very first point, I don't put, if the first point is not reached, I don't put a what? A comma. And if the first point is reached, I separate these keys and the values using a what? Using a comma. And then I'll go ahead and put here, of course I have to remember to update here that the first point has been reached by putting here true. Okay. So that is, you see here, in case the first point is not reached, I'll not put this comma. I'll put the comma if the first point has been reached. Okay. If it has been reached. If the first point is reached, I'll put comma. If it is not reached, I'll not put the comma. Of course, this one will be executed only one time, and it will make this one to be true, and then this loop will continue, making it to be what? To be, to attach these commas, like the way how it is done here. Okay? So let us see what we have done so far. Let us first echo and see what we have done so far. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to echo the keys and the values, and we see so far what we have before we proceed. Echo, let me put here the keys, and I'll attach here the BR. You see, when you write a function like this, you may pass through the painful to write this logic, but it will help you so much to not repeat yourself. For example, this function that will create for me anything that I can insert in any table without just by calling it. Okay, so you see, let us come and refresh and we see if everything is okay. Refresh. Now let us call it. We have not called it, of course. So I'll come here and say db insert. I'm going to call it from here. So db insert, of course, here we have to provide the first thing, we have to provide our table, which is going to be products, I think. Products. And the second thing, we have to provide the what? The data itself. Data like this. Okay. So let us see what we've got here. I'm going to echo the what? The keys and the values. Let us refresh and we see. So can you see what we've got, let me put again the BR properly so that you can see properly. Remember, see what the logic that I've done. It's beautiful. Okay, you see? Even I don't need even put this. Okay, it's okay. But can you see what I've done? These are the keys. Name, email, password, first, last, this and this. And at last, I don't have a comma. Likewise, here in W3 schools, at last, they don't have a comma. So what I need, I just need to put this bracket and this bracket. And then we have keys. Okay? And then, likewise to this one. Musa, do you get the point? And I don't have the comma at last.
Yes.
Do you get the point?
Yeah,
Fatima, are you following? Fat,
Yes.
are you confused?
Can you hear me?
Can you? Yes. Are you confused in anywhere? Yeah.
No,
Not
not yet.
You're still okay, right?
Yes.
Very good. So I can just simply put here, for example, here a bracket before I start looping, and a bracket here before I start looping. I can put space just to be in a safe area. So I can come here and also put the bracket, or you can even just not even put the brackets. So let us write the real SQL. We can even write this SQL here later here. Okay. Of course, our SQL is just simply going to be insert into the table. Okay, like the way it is there, the table, and then we put the keys, and they're going to be surrounded by what? By a bracket. So we're going to put here the keys, and then we write the word values, and here we're going to surround also with them with the what? With a bracket like this. I just thought of this thing, like I was sleeping. I was like, oh, why don't we just write here? I'll put the keys. Can we write a logic in other than inserting every time and we write everything every time? Why don't we write one thing and it can be reused to do anything at any time? So you see, let us see the SQL now. Let us see the SQL that we've come up with. Refresh. Can you see? That's our SQL. So insert into the table name, and then the keys are there, and then the values are there. Only thing that we need, these values need to be surrounded with what? With a single quote, right? They need to be surrounded with a single quote. I know you know that. So I'll put here a single quote and a single quote. Members, you know that, right? When you're inserting in a database,
yeah.
The values
Yes,
have to be surrounded with a what? With a single quote. So refresh. You see? Values are surrounded with single quote. So perfect. So
even with these things, with numbers.
Numbers, yeah, these days even if you surround with single quote, even with numbers, it has no problem.
Oh.
But right now here I don't have numbers. That's a very good question. But right now I don't have numbers here. The only number that I have is the user ID, and that user ID will be auto incremented. Okay. So everything is beautiful so far. So if we need to be safe, I'm going to just do one more thing. This SQL can be executed right now. It can be executed. But if we need to be safe, we need to do what? To check if the column, because for example, you see here the user provided a name. Okay, he provided name, but this name is not in our what? In our database. Okay, I mean in the table of the database, we have first name and last name, but you don't have this column. So I want to put another one more condition, like if we first check the column name before we do what? Before we add this item in a what? In our SQL, because this SQL cannot run right now. Why? Because the column name that the user provided recklessly is not in our what? In our database. So we can also do that, like we first check the column name before we insert, or we do what? We write the SQL. So let's write that function also. You know, at first time we will suffer when writing this function, but in the remaining of the project we will enjoy. So I'm going to do what? I'm going to create a function that will be giving us the names that are found in a certain table, so that before we create the SQL, be first checking if that key is really existing in the column of that table. If it's really a column in a certain table, before I do what? Before I attach it on the SQL. So to do that, just simply come and search here, get table column names SQL. Come to Stack Overflow, there is an answer. I'm going to create that function by myself. It is here. So I'm going to copy this table. So I'm going to write this function somewhere. The code is becoming complex now. I'm going to write this function somewhere. It will be getting for me the names of the columns in a certain table before I do anything. So before I add a certain key on the SQL, I'll be first checking, is that key really a column? Otherwise, if I do like this, then this function will not be fully dynamic. So this is the SQL. It's already written there. So I'm going to just write this SQL. I'm going to write the function. Function is going to be function get table, and this function I can reuse them in any other project. Remember, get table column. Okay, I can say get table column names or get table columns. Okay, so of course it will expect a what? It will expect a table. Okay, table name. Okay, so I'm just going to put here table name is going to be, SQL is going to be here. So let me just copy this the way it is and paste it here. That is the code that I've copied just from Stack Overflow. So let us look at it step by step. It is written as select all from information schema columns where table name is equal to, where table name is equal to, the table names is equal to what? Is equal to the table. Is equal to the table, of course. Okay. Is equal to the table, yeah. I think, yeah. Is equal to the table. Let us put here the what? The table. Okay. Then we run this SQL. Okay. So first of all, remember we have our connection here. Let us call these functions here. So before we even loop, let us get the table names. Okay. Here I'm going to put here a variable that's going to have table columns is equal to get table columns. Okay. And of course we have to provide it a table name that we've just got here. Yeah, like this. So this is going to be executed. So let me first see the SQL is okay before I do anything. So I can simply die with this SQL at this point. Hope you are together. So let's first do that. Refresh. That's our function. Get all from information schema columns where the table name is equal to the table. So let us run the what? The function. So to run the functions, of course, we have the connection. So the connection is going to be con. Remember, I have the connection here. But remember, one more thing that I have not told you. You cannot access the public variable here directly, the way it is. You know, PHP. You cannot access the public variable directly into a the global variable directly into a function. You're going to see what's going to be done. Okay, what's going to happen. Okay, for example, I'm going to get the resource is equal to connection, and then connection you point at what? Query. And this query, what does it take? It takes the SQL. Okay. Let us see what we've got. Of course, I know I'm 100% sure it's going to crash. Why? It is going to say we don't have a function called connection. Okay. So members, see here very carefully. See here very carefully. The question is, we have the connection here defined, but we cannot access that global variable into a what? Into a function. So the question, how do you access a global variable into a function? You simply do like this. just write the word global. That is very, very important, members. To access a global variable into a function, you just simply write the word global and put the name of that global variable, which is con, like this. After putting the name of that global variable, then you'll have that global variable accessible into your what? Into your function. That's very important, members. You should note it. If you have a global variable, like it is here, if you want to access into a function, you just first the word write global, and then you just put the name of that global, then it will be accessed into the global variable. Not like C++. In C++, you just get it directly. So let me dump here what I've got. It's going to be just a resource. Let us see what we've got and see if this thing will come out clearly. Perfect. You can see we've got back the how many rows? We've got back how many rows? How many? 84 rows? 85 rows? Really? Let us see. Let us loop through them and we see what we can get. So it's going to be for each. Or we can put just a while loop. While loop. We're going to put, maybe I can say column is equal to, then we loop through this for each, okay? Fetch ASOC, okay? Connection, how do you get the fetch ASOC? Do you still remember though? Do you attach it on a connection or you attach it on the resource itself? The resource, I think. Fetch underscore ASOC, associative. So let us see what we've got here. I'm going to dump them. I think that's how we fetch an associative array. Okay, so let me dump this call here. Printer. So I'm going to refresh here. Perfect. Okay, perfect. Oh, but it has got for us a lot of things. What is this? Table catalog. Oh my god, this is not what you asked for. This is not what you asked for. It has got for me the table names. Select schema columns. Oh, let us go back and see. I think this just gives for us the tables, Get. Maybe the where. The where is having the problem. It has got for us, I think, all the columns in the. Let us remove the quotes and we see. It has got just all the columns. It has got for us all the columns in what? In our where the table is equal to, first of all, which table is it? It has got for us everything. My god. Products. This connection, you did not specify a database? Why is it bringing everything? Okay, let's look back and we see rows. Let us look back. Let us go back and we see another SQL. Select all from the table name where 1 is equal to 1. By the way, this one can also where 1 is equal to 0. I know. Let's look at this one's idea. Select all from the table name where 1 is equal to 0. I think here to let us see. Let's look at. Let us look at this one's idea. I also don't know. So select all from this where 1 is equal to 0. Of course, it's going to return. Yeah, that's a good idea also. Select all from a certain table where 1 is equal to 0. Yeah, that can also return an empty values. Let me first duplicate this SQL. So it's going to be.
Man, what does the word schema mean first?
Schema means the table. That's how we
tables.
call it in what? In database. select all from the table. I mean, select all from the table where 1 is equal to 0. Yeah, I think this one will return for us just everything that is from the table, even if that table is empty. Let us see. Uh-oh, it has returned nothing because there is nothing, of course, that comes back. Let me dump here. Okay, we're having fields. Okay, thing count fields. Number 0. That's not a good idea. Or you select 0 from top. Select all. Select top 0 from the table. Select. Let me try this SQL, but I believe we can do that because I don't want this to be having errors. Pause this video first. In the remaining insert will just be simply calling this function and it will be inserting for us. I'm going to share this source code so that you can be able to re-download it. I mean to download it and compare with your own code, but don't copy directly the code. You can just use it for what? For comparing with your own code and see if your code is together with mine. Okay, let's start from there in the next class tomorrow, inshallah.